Ukraine's main urban center in the west, Lviv, has been mostly spared the attacks launched on the cities in the east. But that city is playing a key role in the conflict as the main transit point for many of the now some 3 million refugees who have fled the fighting. Earlier today, Lviv's Mayor Andriy Sadovyi spoke with our news director, i24NEWS, who asked him how his city is coping with the flood of refugees.
In the last 2 weeks, we've received more than 200,000 refugees from all over the country. These are people fleeing the bombings. Of course, it was a shock for us at first, but we opened the doors to people from the beginning. We accept everyone who comes. A large proportion of them remain in Lviv. Some continue after that to Poland and other EU countries. We devoted time in advance to preparing the city for an emergency. That's why our city is functioning, even though all the schools have become centers where people live, as well as theaters, gyms. Also religious centers have become residential centers. The main problematic issue is the economic issue, because the cost of housing and living maintenance for the refugees stands at about $1 million daily. It's not easy. All services work in an emergency, but the city is functioning. You have to understand, Lviv is a city of 1 million inhabitants, and at the moment it feels like one more city has been added in terms of the number of inhabitants. It's very difficult, but it's our duty to accept all Ukrainians, because they are our brothers and sisters.
We asked the mayor how concerned he is that Lviv may soon be targeted by the Russians after a missile attack this past weekend on a military base just some 30 miles from the city.
All cities in the country are now in the same situation, because it's impossible to know where the next missile will land. Indeed, 3 days ago, 40 kilometers from the city of Lviv, missiles hit the International Peace Center. This is a great tragedy, but also a great tragedy for the Poles. The center is located 20 kilometers away from the Polish border. The explosions sounded louder in Polish cities than in the city of Lviv. Everyone is already beginning to understand that the war is taking place on the border with NATO. This is a rhetorical question I ask our partners. If the missile falls in your territory tomorrow, what will you do then? It takes them time to answer. That's why we need anti-missile weapons here, now. In recent days, more than 100,000 Ukrainian men have returned to the country. They're going to fight. We now have more interested in going to fight than we have an ability to absorb them in recruitment centers. Regarding the historical sites, indeed, Lviv is the pearl of the world, a city that is on the UNESCO list, and we have already seen in Afghanistan that the Taliban destroyed historical sites. Of course, we protect our historical sites by all means. We have a plan to protect the cultural sites. We've created a very serious area protection. There are skilled units for the protection of the city, and we'll protect every meter of our land. We have no other land. This is our land. We will do what any Israeli citizen would do in our place. Once you are attacked, you all defend your land together. This is exactly what Ukraine is doing now.
Now, because Vladimir Putin keeps calling the Ukrainian leadership neo-Nazis, we asked the mayor about how Lviv relates to its own Jewish community and its very rich Jewish past.
One of my close friends is Rabbi Blood. He is the rabbi of the city of Lviv. He's a wise man, and I consult with him a lot. The Jewish community here feels belonging and close because Armenians, Jews, Germans, Russians, Poles, Ukrainians, all of us together, we have nothing to divide us. If Russia says such things about Zelensky, listen, if such things are said about a Jew, then the world has gone mad. Therefore, Israel must choose a side now and take a clear pro-democratic position. You're a democratic country, and today there's an attack on democracy. Today Jews are killed. In Ukraine, Jews are killed. When Russian missiles were aimed at the Babi Yar Museum, it was symbolic. 80 years have passed since the first tragedy. I'm appealing to your wisdom. For example, we have problems with the supply of protective vests from Israel, since there is a government policy that prohibits this. A protective vest saves the life of one person. I'm not even talking about ammunition. I thank you, of course, for the humanitarian aid you provide. It's very important. Through the ambassador of Israel, we received very powerful generators. We're a city of light, a city where people of different nationalities live, a very tolerant city that respects everyone.
And we asked Mayor Sadovyi how he feels about Israel's position on the conflict as it tries to maintain its dialogue with Moscow by refraining from shipping arms to Ukraine and from refraining from imposing its own sanctions on Russia.
Ізраїль, мені здається, ще живе трошки минулим.
I think Israel is still living its past life in the context of relations with Russia and Ukraine. Right now, the world has completely changed. All the major hotspots in the world were not prepared for Putin to bomb. Ukraine has shown its power, and we are ready to expel the enemy from our land. The sooner we have quality weapons, this expelling of the enemy from our land will be faster, and there will be fewer refugees. I would very much like Israel to take the position held by the United States, Canada, or Britain, and most of the countries of the European Union, because two systems are currently in conflict, the totalitarian system and the democratic system, and democracy will win. It will win like David defeated Goliath. Be with David, who will defeat the totalitarian regime.
Finally, we asked the mayor about the progress of negotiations and whether Ukraine would be willing to accept some of the reported conditions demanded by Russia, such as that it adopt neutrality or be willing to be demilitarized.
Переговори дійсно тривають, і вони ще будуть тривати, тому що кожна війна, вона...
Indeed, the talks are continuing and they will continue, because every war has rules. Russia was and will remain a neighbor of Ukraine. Russia was and will remain a threat to Ukraine. We need to understand this, that there will be no illusions about it. I think the stronger position we show in the talks, the more successful the results of the talks will be for us. If Israel were to offer clauses that Russia offers to Ukraine, would you agree to them? Would you agree to be demilitarized? Never, because they would have conquered you. The same thing is happening in Ukraine. Ukraine will never agree to the terms now offered by Russia. But I have one emphasis. Now the world needs to build new alliances, because unfortunately, NATO is an organization that requires significant modernization. We saw this during the 22 days of our war. Today, the UN also needs to undergo modernization because the organization is not functioning as it should in such a situation. We today in Ukraine are building the future of the world, the way it will look and what wars there will be in the future. We need to do everything possible to prevent the future wars and be 2 steps ahead.